Hello everyone. Welcome to Module 6, Session 5, Logo Design Process. Let's dive in. So in our previous session 4, we have tried to explore what are the different variations of logo design, right? Logo type. And we have also looked into different terminologies associated to other types of logo. So if you see, we have looked into the brand mark, like the emblem logo, the combination logo, how logo type and brand marks plays an important role in terms of combining the overall essence, right? And we have looked into interesting logo, how logo can be very much interesting, and there can be hidden meanings, right, associated to that. Today we'll see, now since we have a better idea of the range and the types of logo, now we'll see how do we design logo, what is the process involved associated to that. Primarily we'll also see in terms of, we'll overall see the session in terms of discussions with the case study where some of my students were involved in live projects, and how we manage and how we tackle the scenario and what kind of output we have generated. So we will directly move into the case study discussion with students. So in this discussion, we'll have two students project. So one is from bachelor's, one is from master's, and we'll try to understand what are the decision making happen, right, based on the feedback of the clients. And we'll also see how clients play a important role while designing such kind of logos, and how we as a designer should always take their perspective and also understand how we can also pitch in our perspective by better visualization. How do we convince them with different discussions, right? And what kind of output we are addressing in terms of finalizing the logo. So with this, we'll jump to the overall case study discussion. Hi, so with me is Manasi. She is a BDES student, and together we have worked on a project, especially in branding, since we are discussing about it. And we'll discuss her project and what are the initiatives she has taken into consideration, especially in terms of identity design, which is very much important in terms of branding, right? As we say, branding is like primarily it speaks about the perception, but when you see a logo, it also becomes the face of a company. And Manasi has done some of the works, and we will discuss that. What are the initiatives we have taken, and how did we come up with a solution of an identity design? So, Manasi, can you explain us what is the project about?
Absolutely, Saurav.
Yeah.
So, starting off with understanding who the company is. So, Yogiraj Tours and Travels is a company which is based off of in Maharashtra. They specialize in spiritual tours, and their specific audience is senior travelers.
Yeah, I think primarily she has also worked in the idea of how the brand needed some kind of identity, but they were not sure how to project the brand in terms of a brand identity. And Manasi has talked with the stakeholders, primarily seeking for what are the brand requirements, and how do they formulate some kind of visual representation. And with that, I'm pretty sure Manasi has done most of the study, understanding the brand, how it will function. So when talking with the stakeholders, yeah, Manasi, what are the problems which you have identified when talking with them in terms of their brand? How do they want to represent?
Absolutely. So, from where my research started was sort of that the brand needed a whole new look in terms of their vision, in terms of their tone, what are their values. So, they wanted me to establish an identity which will align with who their users are, what is their niche, which is the spiritual tours.
Okay,
And they also wanted me to incorporate the element of scalability,
got it.
since the current scale of the brand is in Maharashtra, but further in terms of expansion, if the identity will fit across all the other cultures as well.
Okay. So when you have got the brief, right? What are the key points you have looked on? Like in terms of defining the image. Say, for example, you are creating some kind of image, right, which can be a symbol later on, right? So, what are the observations while you have dealt with the client, right? What are the observations you have kept?
I believe for me, the step one was understanding the story of the brand. What was their origin? How did they come up with this idea? How did it start? What was their first tour? What was the experience? And in the process of research, I also was invited to one of their trips. So I took a trip with them to Rajasthan with their users, interacting with them. What do the users think about the brand? And also a lot of discussions with the owner of how they want the brand to reflect.
Got it. So this is a very important point which Manasi have identified and highlighted. And here I would also like to emphasize that how it's important while you are giving a brand, right? When you are giving a face of that particular brand, somewhere or the other you have to also understand how the community are perceiving about that brand. And when you talk with the people, stakeholders, it helps you to communicate their understanding, their perception, and somewhere or the other when you are trying to create some kind of visual representation, some elements about such kind of conversations can get reflected in your design. And this is where the idea of research and analysis makes a very important point while you do any kind of identity design. So yes, and then she came up with different strategies, right? And how she have overall structure the planning of the project. And within that, again, there are some specific tools she have used. This is again important when you're trying to create an identity. You have to use some of the digital tools in the world of print and publication, and that will get replicated in different segments based on the needs and requirement. And we have divided the overall project in 16 weeks, and you can see it here. Primarily, we started with the discovery, ideation, and execution style guide. So in discovery, yes, whatever we have discussed, right? What are the key points associated to the brand? How she have interacted with the client? And there are some of the keywords which you have taken specifically. Can you emphasize on those keywords which you feel was quite important for you?
Absolutely. So, when it comes to creating an identity for a brand, one thing we want to consider is a brand as persona. Every brand has its own different persona, has its own beliefs. So, the keywords which I chose align with what is the niche of Yogiraj and what makes it different from the competitors. Now, as I mentioned, that I had conversations with the stakeholders, I talked to the owner of what is their perception. But we also want to see that what is already there in the market, who are the competitors, and what are their identities, and how do we stand out from a business perspective.
True.
So, when it came to identity, um, one niche was the spiritual aspect of the brand. Another niche was again the region, the origin of the brand, which was Maharashtra. And since we were dealing with senior citizens, there was the element of comfort, the travel of locations, and also understanding what is the class of the stakeholders they are
Segments.
referring.
Yeah.
The segment, yes.
True. And this is where again it helps you to reflect on the brand anatomy. When you are creating any kind of visual representation, sometimes you can create some abstract representation of it. So the keywords definitely will help you to create some kind of direct depiction sometimes, and say for sometimes it becomes abstract. So if you see Nike logo, Adidas logo, those are abstract representation, but again there is a sense of dynamic representation to it because of the diagonal line, right? The swoosh, which you can see like it's very swift in nature, right? And that also indirectly it projects the idea how brand can be reflected in an abstract way. And keywords plays an important role when you are visualizing it, so you can translate those keywords in a visual representation, and that definitely comes with the idea of practice. So you have to go through multiple ideations. So here you can see Manasi has went through multiple ideations, and she took into consideration how the keywords can be reflected visually, right? And can you explain some of the keywords how you have converted to visual forms?
Absolutely. So, I was born and brought up in Maharashtra, so my memory associated with my hometown is the Bhagwa flag, which is the orange flag. So I started off with a surface level ideation, um, just putting all the ideas that there are, whatever things that came to my mind, this is how it'll work, or this is related to spirituality. It's like a very convergent brainstorming, and it like going ahead, like beyond the expansive sketching, was connecting with the stakeholders again and taking their feedback, their opinion on what do they think, that what is aligning with the brand values.
Yeah. So I can also see you have worked on typography and brand mark, right?
Yeah.
So I can see here some of the elements are associated to typeface, some of the elements are associated to brand mark, and again you can see the word Yogiraj has been part of your explorations. And suddenly I can see a shift here from this point, from where you have taken consideration the anatomy of a flag, right? And that too some which is associated to most of the temples, right? You can see some flags associated to that. What made you use this form in terms of representing the brand identity?
So, what we were looking for is um, to make the brand look more inclusive, which is why I didn't want to go into the specifics of spirituality,
Okay.
but also to express the element of spirituality through colors and through other things. So, here, I believe as I was going through the sketching phase, um, it just opens up a lot of directions and it starts building a story in itself. So when I started off with the flag, I started seeing the flow of the freedom and how travel works. And then I started integrating different ideas. Like in some places, you will see there's an inspiration from airplanes.
True.
So
So
it's
I
like
feel
that.
that you have also incorporated that element in terms of movement. So since the
Yes.
flag is again, it's speaking about. So when I see a arrow associated to that, again it has a sense of traveling to it, right?
Right.
And there is
Yes.
a sense of direction towards it. And I think you have tried to execute it in different variations. I can see as a full shape. Then we also came up with a discussion like how that can be lines can speak, right, rather than
Exactly.
like a
Yes.
huge dominant of that particular black shape. How do you create some variations within that? And I can see you have done some of the exploration, and we have done multiple explorations which are not included as of now. Yeah, and this is very important again at this point in terms of exploration, because sometimes you may struggle in terms of defining the form, right? But I would request you to take consideration the keywords, and you have to stick to the idea. Definitely, you can explore a lot, but the idea of which you are trying to project. So, in her case, the idea was about traveling and to create a sense of spiritual relevance to the overall anatomy. And here you can clearly see the idea of traveling, the dynamic nature of the flag, right? Again, it's a connection in terms of culture. Somewhere or the other, the sense of culture, Indian culture, has been imprinted in the overall representation. And when you see the overall representation in lines, again we try to see, we are not stuck with the idea of shape here, because again lines create different emotion, I would say. And again it projects the idea in a more dynamic representation. And you can see the moment we have used lines as a part of the representation, it gave us more, I would say, interesting or engaging feel with the identity. And then we finalize, right? So this
Yeah.
is where we have finalized the anatomy, and you can see
That's right.
here, this is the final representation. Along with that, uh, we have used typeface, right? So how do you see the importance of typeface in logo design?
I believe what we have been taught all along is, again, every typeface has its own persona
True.
of what it reflects, the weight, the kerning, and everything. So, through the typeface, what we wanted to communicate was, our priority was readability. That if picturing this whole identity into actual collaterals. If I see a scenario where, okay, there is a bus where Yogiraj is written, it should be visible to me from
Yes.
very far off. So readability was one big
Yeah, so
aspect.
here again, I would like to emphasize Manas's like perception. So because when you're choosing typeface for a brand, make sure you always focus on the platform which is going to be used. Be it a digital platform, be it a print platform, maybe it can be a book, right? Or it can be a very mini print, right? So when you're choosing the typeface, the legibility of that typeface should be maintained in every condition, right? Be it in a larger scale or smaller scale. And that's why we have had a good discussion upon it, how, what font to be considered, and how we have also looked into different variants of that
That's
typeface,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And we have chosen and we have finalized one typeface which is primarily quite modern. It evokes the essence of modernity, and this is where the brand was inclining to us. Since they want to expand,
That's right.
we also have to try to understand what is their perception, and based on that we felt modern representation will have better projection. That's why if you see the typeface here, it has more geometrical anatomy, right, which is quite like relevant to that context. And once we have finalized the typeface, again, we have also looked like how the brand color and the theme and the emotion can be projected. So when we say brand color, again, this is very important for us to understand what the stakeholder is seeking for, what the client is seeking for, and how the community associated to that brand, right? How the consumers will perceive. So you have to go balance with both the sense. So yeah, Manasi, why you have chosen such kind of palette? Can you explain?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, again, as I said, that we also wanted to stick with the roots, the keyword which was Maharashtrian. So, we did want an element of orange into the picture since it screams Maharashtrian. So, we wanted a lot of cultural relevancy. That was one. And secondly, we wanted the color to be very visible from a far off distance. So, putting the identity in different scenarios of what will happen if I use this color, what will happen if I use that color. Choosing the reason behind choosing the pink, the very bright pink, was that the tour guides, who are one of our stakeholders, they should be able to locate that where the travelers are
True.
to call them back. So, a lot of it went into picturing how this color will fit into their current scenario.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
so I totally agree with her. Again, this is an important point which she has highlighted while taking the perception of the brand, how it's going to implement. So when you are designing parallelly, you have to also look in the way how the brand is going to project and what are the vision you are taking into consideration while you are choosing such kind of colors. So she has rightly said that there may be some instances where you have to seek for people where you are making the arrangement, right? And from far the color is again correlation to the brand, and somewhere the other there is a sense of community when you're traveling with the same color. And this contrasting or bright saturated colors will help you to seek from far, right? And it will also act as a brand recall. So whenever you see this color in any instances when you're traveling, you will always recall to this brand as a community seeking that, okay, we are coming together, we are traveling together, and there's a sense of unknown communication happening. Okay. And with this, again, we have finalized how we balance both the colors, like we have chosen two colors, and with that we have taken into consideration and finalized this, right? And tell us the experience when you have taken into consideration and given this output, right, to your client, and how did the client reacted to this?
So when I pitched this logo to the client that this is where we have come, the client was more interested to hear the story behind why this logo. Um, so for the client, this logo was just the structure was the surface, but again the whole build up of what it represents was something which caught their eye, and they were amazed by
True.
the minimalism and how
Hmm.
it can be expanded.
Yeah. So now since the client has accepted, right, and they can connect, and this connection came because she also have to tell the story. So when you are pitching to a client, somewhere or the other, as a designer, your way of addressing the solution should be conveyed to the client in a very stronger way. What I mean by stronger is like, what are the steps you have taken into consideration? What was your process? Why you have ignored this, right? Say for example, you may have 2 3 iterations and equally all are good, but you as a designer have to take the call and make the client convinced that this makes sense. And this might not work every time, but again, you as a designer has to take this step to make them convinced of why it's functional in nature, how it will work. And that will definitely come when you showcase the process and also some kind of vision. So vision, what I mean by that is some kind of mock-ups. So mock-ups always helps the client to foresee how the brand will look at that particular space, right, at that particular environment. And this is where the idea of identity design comes into play when you're trying to pitch it. Okay. And with this again, when you're finalizing something, you have to also give some kind of guidelines, structure, that the overall anatomy is maintained. There are high chances that you may give the design, right? But the client, if they don't know how the overall guideline is, the whole representation may deviate from the way how you have given. And this is where I can see you have scaled it,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And can you give us a brief, like how did you scale these things?
So here we wanted to properly fit how will the text and the weight of the logo mark
Hmm.
and the weight of the subtext will go along. So X was like a common variable that we kept when it was
Yes.
time to place the whole this thing. So
Yeah, so there you can see this is again, if we talk about the logo, we have talked earlier about what are the different types of logo, right? This is a combination logo where you see the brand mark and the logo type, right? So there's a text associated to that particular brand. So it's a combination. So when you are combining both the brand mark and the typeface, you have to also understand how the brand marks is close by or far away from that particular representation. And this is where again the principle of proximity comes, the Gastol's principle. So when it's close by and it's mapped nicely and you are considering the visual balance, right? So it automatically you will correlate the overall name with the particular brand mark. Imagine the name is quite far away from the brand mark. You will never associate that name with the particular brand because the law of proximity doesn't work in that way, right? So in that way, she have definitely take those consideration and it came out nice in that way. And you can see there are two variants of this logo. And this is a very important part how you consider the languages, since India is a diverse country, right? And to communicate to a larger audience, somewhere or the other, you have to also understand and empathize where the audience is coming from. And yeah, so that's why we have taken into consideration of the Devanagari script to be part of the compositions. So with this, yeah, we have also showcased the client how the overall representation was happening,
right.
and you can see a huge difference how they have been projecting. And with the new idea, new look, it looks more acceptable to a larger community, right? Even though youngsters can also get influenced by
That is
this,
true.
right? And that
Yes.
can cater a larger set of audience. And then yeah, so can you explain us what are this and why we need this?
Absolutely. So, to, I would say, to communicate the identity and again to sell the identity to the client, there's a depiction of how this will look in multiple collaterals. So, we have the legals over here, we have the letterhead and how the visiting cards will look, the posters, we have the t shirts and all the collaterals, just to give them a very close to real sense of this is what their brand will be once the whole identity is implemented.
True. So, adding to Manas's the idea, right? So the idea of collaterals again plays an important role because it helps the client to envision, right, how it will look, how it will work, and this is very much essential because they can foresee the overall brand in the real life scenario. And while you are addressing collaterals, please make sure it's relevant to them, okay, to their context. You can see clearly how Manishi has considered the idea of letterhead. Yes, there will be official document associated with that travel agencies, right? For that you need letterhead, right? There are visiting cards. There will be multiple visitors who might ask for a package and all. For them to communicate again, to recall the brand, you need a visiting card. Apart from that, there are trips which are associated to that particular brand, and that's why sometimes trips need some kind of uniform and all, right? T-shirt design or any kind of employees associated to that can take that essence, and from far you can easily identify if anything happens, you communicate with the employee, and this comes with the help of the dress code and all, right? And you can see bags. Traveling needs bags. Again, there are promotional posters which you can see again associated to that. Most importantly, she have also considered the digital space, which is the website, right? How the website can create a point of connection networking for the brand, right? And this will also enhance them to create better users associated to the particular brand. And if we scroll down there again, identity design, especially depicted in terms of like iCard, right?
Right.
And banners, which again I think they liked it,
Yeah,
right? And they can foresee this overall how the even if they are opening for buses and all, how it get connected. Brochure, which is very very important for any kind of travel agency. What are the plans? What are the packages associated to that? Helps them to navigate the overall idea of that particular brand. And not only this, she has also asked the owner, right, of that particular brand, and you can explain this last portion of this overall journey. Yeah.
Surely. So, by the end of this whole design, definitely an identity design does not end very abruptly. So, I also pitched them that what is the future scope and how can we expand this identity into, again, experiential travel design, and how can it delve into strategic marketing initiatives. By the end of it, okay, this is the feedback that I got from the owner himself, that he absolutely loved the brand. There was a huge contrast between what they were currently using, and now they had a very standardized and their own identity. So it was really exciting for the client, for us, and also for all the stakeholders that they had involved. So all in
Yeah,
all,
so
yeah.
this is again a important part which Manas is emphasizing is like how we should also take consideration towards the journey, how you are addressing it. So your client plays an important role. So a good design is always collaborative in nature. This is what we teach and this is what we practice. So when you are designing for your client, your users, try to make sure you are getting them involved as a part of the design process, and you will get much better feedback which are sometimes practical in nature. And you as a designer may not have such kind of expertise in that particular area. Involving them will help them as a participatory study, and that will come up with a better output when you are trying to address any kind of solutions, right? And here you can see how the client was quite satisfied because from the day one we have involved them, we have showcased the ideas, and together we work which will work, which not will work, right? And then we finally concluded the overall project, and it was quite satisfactory in that way. We have completed and they have gracefully accepted our solutions, right? And with this, we will end this first case. And I thank you, Manasi, for your time and enlightening us from the stakeholders' perspective. And I hope the journey made you learn something new. Can you identify which some of the key learnings from the overall branding project?
Absolutely. So, my very first major learning was to stick to the basics. Also, when I started the whole brainstorming and the expansive sketching, you can see there is a lot of, it's a journey.
True.
So it started with very rigid forms and then it flew into the most basic elements. So that was one thing, that's sticking to basics and considering multiple elements when it comes to developing an identity. Second, as you rightly said, that the involvement of the stakeholder and the client is very important, since it's a very iterative and a very feedback based process. And the final learning was to always consider the scalability
True.
of how this identity will play a role in different scenarios, in different spaces, different cultures.
Yeah. Yes. I think it was fun. We had a good discussion upon it, and I hope all of you have got some idea about it. I hope you have a great day, and this discussion has helped you in understanding the basic concepts of how we design identity, what are the key points and principles we have to take into consideration. Thank you so much. Yeah.